Hello, and welcome to the World Chess Hall of Fame. I'm Grandmaster Robert Hungaski, and I'm here with Mr. Paul Firos. And today we're going to be discussing M.C. Escher's exhibit, Infinite Variations. Hello, Mr. Firos.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. And I have to confess, I have never really seen Escher's work before. And I was very impressed.
Oh.
At least I got the impression that most of his work were these sort of wood cutouts. Mm-hmm. Is that right? That was his preferred.
Yeah.
Woodcuts was his preferred medium.
And lithography. In fact, he is an unusual artist. First of all, no art historian can place him in any of the known categories. So he just is by himself. And therefore they all refer to him as the graphic artist, which he wasn't. He was a real artist. But because they didn't know in which pocket to put him, although he had a lot of followers, that is, contemporary artists today that use his techniques, imagery, I should say. So, as an artist, Escher had two basic periods. He had the so-called Italian period. This is when he lived in Italy, and therefore most of these works were actually landscapes. And the second period after 1934 is where he begins to dwell into these strange things. Mathematical tessellations, probing the infinite and how to represent it. His images are very cerebral. You really have to sit down and think when you look at an image. I can guarantee you on every print I can sit down and point out something to you that you wouldn't have noticed. And I don't know if that was his intent. Maybe he thought that people would see it right away, but
yeah, and I've noticed in several of his prints that he plays a lot with this concept of the yin and the yang, the two images that complement each other.
Yeah, the tessellations.
Yeah.
That he was first introduced to that in Alhambra when he went in Spain to visit, and he was mesmerized by these geometrical images that fit one into the other.
Right.
And then he went a step further and he said, what about instead of squares and stars and whatever, I put flowers, animals and whatever. And that opened up his whole search of the tessellation concept.
Okay, and what are some artists that have been influenced by Escher?
Mostly unknown.
Okay, kind of like Escher during his time as well.
Oh, during his time, nobody. I don't know of any artist during his time that looked at his work and said, I'll do something similar. Because he was so odd. You know, he was a contemporary of Picasso, of Dali, of Matisse, I mean, we're talking about...
You would have thought him and Dali would have been best friends, yeah?
Oh no, opposite, I would say. They probably never knew of each other. Because they were in so different places. You see, Dali was more of the supernatural thing, while Escher was the most precise thing I can do, I will do.
Now, you said he had very little to no recognition during his lifetime, but just behind us, there's a work that was commissioned by a company. I think it's like a cookie jar, right?
Yes.
So that seems like a silver lining, sort of at the end of his career. Maybe he got it.
Well, at the very, very end of his career, 1971, he died in 72.
Oh, all right.
And maybe he was not fully aware of what he was committing to, because it's totally against his character. And certainly by then he knew that he was dying of cancer. So I'm very surprised that he agreed, but sometimes, you know, you make decisions, and probably he figured it's not going to go too far.
So since we're at the Chess Hall of Fame, it begs the question, what is the relationship that you see between Escher and his work and chess?
Well, there is one particular work that definitely ties the two together, and this is a Metamorphosis 2, which is the 14-foot long print that you cannot miss. It's the first thing you'll see when you come into the hall. So clearly in his mind, the chess was something that he wanted to depict, and he did it in a wonderful way, because just before it becomes the chessboard, a tower is part of an Italian castle, and then it becomes a real chessboard. The position of the pawns is a checkmate in 2 moves.
Oh.
And at this point, I would like to refer to a theory by a good friend of mine, Jeff Price, who has a gallery in Norwalk, Connecticut, from where I bought my first Escher, actually. And his theory is that this print was printed in 1939. And at the time, Holland declared itself neutral to the upcoming Nazi onslaught. And maybe Escher, according to Jeff, maybe Escher tried to depict the fact that Holland was trapped because it was trapped by its own pawns, and the checkmate in 2 moves, as opposed to checkmate, was the fact that the imminent demise was due.
That's interesting. I actually completely missed that when I was looking at
nobody
the exhibit
sees it
last
that
night.
way. It's very. That's what I said earlier about Escher. You have to keep looking at the print, and eventually you will see the message. It's never blatant. It's never, like a Warhol, Marilyn Monroe. No, you have to keep looking and looking, and eventually, with the help of others, together we can reach to a discovery. I saw on your card that you teach chess.
Yeah, well, I was, like I mentioned, in Greece last year, and I was there because of a World Youth Chess Championship.
Oh.
And I am one of the coaches of the US team. Every year, the World Youth Chess Championship is held in a different country, and last year it was held in Greece. So that's where I got an opportunity to go to Athens first and spend a few days there. I've always been completely fascinated by Greek culture.
Yeah. How did you find the Greek chess players?
I didn't encounter many Greek chess players because most of the time that I spent, it was locked in a room with all the U.S. team, and the time that I was in Athens, I was thinking about everything except chess, probably. Yes. But it was a fantastic experience. I mean, just after so many years of reading and Well, Mr. Firos, we're at the end of our journey. I would like to thank you for sharing all your knowledge on MC Escher and your collection with us. For those of you interested in visiting the exhibit, it will be on display at the World Chess Hall of Fame through September 22nd. And for more information, you can just go to the World Chess Hall of Fame website. So, thank you once again.
Thank you. Great pleasure to meet you.
Likewise.